Hi everyone, I'm Luke Hector and this is The Broken Meeple, a show where I rave and rant about board games, and it's usually more ranting than raving, let's be truly honest. This is for Echoes of Time, a little simple card game that came out of nowhere from Cranio Creations, which, if you know anything about Cranio Creations, artwork's not usually their first, thought process when it comes to developing a game, and yet this one comes out with a beautiful cover and some of the best artwork I've seen this year. It's like, okay, this is a little bit different, what else have you got to show for me? Well, the only thing that gave me a little bit of worry is a certain name on the box. Simone Luciani. Get out! Get out of there! Now, this is a co-design. Roberto Pellai is the main designer, and Simone Luciani is a co-designer. Now, let's be truly honest here and frank with everybody. This isn't a designer whose games I've tenderly gelled with in the past. I mean, just to take a look at some notable ones here, right? Notable games of BGG. Zolkin the Mayan Calendar, Voyages of Marco Polo, Council of Four, Grand Austria Hotel, Lorenzo and Magnifico, Newton, Marco Polo 2, Barrage, Gollum, Teletum, Darwin's Journey, and Nukai, Dawn of the Gods, whatever that was, Rats of Wistar, and Nucleum. Now, a good amount of those games I don't look at with a smile on my face, okay? I mean, Marco Polo, do not like. Council of Four, boring. Grand Austria Hotel, great at 2 or less players, takes too long with 3 or 4. Newton, I actually do quite like. That one I do like. Marco Polo 2, just the same as Marco Polo. Barrage, hate its guts, wish it would burn in hell. Golem, actually still have it on my shelf. That's a pretty solid game. Teletum, boring. Darwin's Journey, boring. Haven't played Dawn of the Gods. Rats of Wistar, boring, tight, and really punishing and just meh. And Nucleum, okay. It's better than Brass, but that wasn't exactly a high benchmark for me. So,
are you prepared for the kind of death you've earned, little man?
Granted, yes, a lot of people are going to have my head for that, but just a lot of these games, it's just a designer that doesn't tend to work for me, and he does a lot of stuff co-design. I mean, Daniel Tassini, Virginio Gigli, Nestor Mangon, David Turksey, there's a lot of names on here that generally suggest that he co-designs a lot of stuff. So this is another co-design, but again, it looks very different to what Cranio Creations typically put out, and to be fair, it looks very different to anything I would normally see Luciani put out. So I was very intrigued to jump into this one. Now the review copy, I just thought, you know what, it's relatively cheap. Let's buy a copy. I heard some good buzz. Looks nice. It looks like something different. And you know what, if a designer and a publisher is going to try and bring out something a bit different, I'm all for it to give it a try.
What are you waiting for? A kiss goodbye?
So Echoes of Time bears a similar resemblance to another game called Ancient Knowledge that Yellow Games did. Basically where you're building up an engine from cards, but it's based on a timer track. So where you put the cards, they'll either have abilities or they won't, and they will move along a timer track, and once they fall off, different things will happen. Well, the idea with this is that you will have a board. It paints a little panoramic picture if you set it up right. I haven't done it here, so sorry, but the idea is that you will have a tile off the board, and you will have 5 tiles on here, and this represents the different timer tracks. This plays in a kind of similar vein to Race for the Galaxy, where there are several ways the game can end. You can fortify a bunch of these source locations, which are kind of like, mini battlefields, I guess. You can collect from a pool of victory point tokens, so much like in Race for the Galaxy, you exhaust the pool of tokens, that will trigger an end of the game. Or you can just have a bunch of cards in your tableau, and that will trigger it in itself. But what you'll have is that you will have a hand of cards, and each one of them has faction icons, type icons, and a strength value. Most of these just cater for card effects. The strength value is what you use to take over battlefields, more on that a bit later, but primarily they have special effects. They could be instant, they could be passive, they could be triggered by flame effects on tiles. Again, we'll get to that in a minute. But primarily, you will play cards by paying their cost. Their cost comes in 2 aspects, though. One of them is the amount of cards you've got to get rid of from your hand. So if I want to play this one, I've got to bin 2 cards. Bin 2 cards, play this one. But also, it has an hourglass symbol on it, which represents where on the time track I have to put the card. So in this case, it's free. It means it goes there. When a card is on the track, it doesn't do anything. It is effectively a blank slate. You have to basically get it off the board. Now, this will move automatically at the start of a round. You will essentially push the piece in here, and it will push the timer track along and release another one. But there are actions that you can do on your turn to speed things up. So you can mark them with, little tokens like this. And you can draw more cards, you can play more cards, you can advance this timer, advance the cards further along the spaces, or you can try to get these battlefields. So these battlefields basically are put in 1 per player, And they represent like a special effect that you can grab, but this requires you to collect enough strength value on the cards themselves. So what will happen is, let's say, for example, I've got, let's take a good example, Source of Stability. This is one of the ones in play. I need at least 2 strength in order to take this over. Well, I've got the Rabbit Berserker here. Yes, that is a thing. It's a Rabbit Berserker. And essentially what happens is that I will take over the area, I will get a special bonus for controlling it, but what happens is that the characters that I used in order to take the source are placed underneath it so that their effects don't get used anymore. Abyss did something very similar with the location effects you might remember from that game. But also you can fortify these locations later. So once you've got a few more creatures and you can get over its fortify value, you can essentially fortify it, which means nobody can take it off you, but then it means everything about the card is covered. So even the faction icons and everything, like these cards are effectively out of the game. It's just now you've got this location, you've got the bonus, you get the endgame points, and no one can nick it off you, plus it's an endgame timer. Other than that, the cards have varying different effects. You know, they'll have instant effects, passive effects, they'll come in different factions and different types, but they also have flame icons on them. They have a blue, yellow, and a red flame. And basically, if this card is in your tableau, so for example here, the Stratego's Badger. Yes, this is a badger playing what looks like Stratego. It's pretty amusing. You have a flame icon that says, take a victory point for each of this particular faction. Okay, I've got 3 of these. I'll take 3 points. And the way you trigger them is it's from the tile that's not on your board. So this one has a blue flame at the moment, so this one I wouldn't be able to trigger. But once I have a turn, push it along, now I've got a yellow on my turn as a free action, I can effectively trigger all the yellow flame actions. And some appear more than others. There's more blue, slightly less yellow, only 1 red. But the reds tend to be more powerful effects, the blue tend to be weaker effects. And essentially, you play through the game just doing a couple of actions, then moving the timer, updating for any battlefield effects and stuff like that, but you just keep going, 2 actions apiece, taking it in turns until one of the 3 endgame triggers is met. So lots of cards in your tableau, fortified all the sources in the game, or taking all the victory points out of the pool, and at that stage you then total up any more victory points from cards you have or any other endgame bonuses, and then see who wins.
Well, that went okay.
So we'll start with the obvious. Oh my god, this is look good. I mean, this is a very nice looking game. The artwork is stellar, alright? Giovanni Calor. I don't know if you've done other art, but man, I want to see more from you. This looks gorgeous. You know, the battlefield sources are fine. You know, then I've seen better, but I've seen a lot worse, but they are still really nice. But the card artwork, whew, I mean, it is an overused theme. We've seen this whole anthropomorphic animals thing, and that is what you've got here. You've effectively got like a frog faction, a rabbit faction, a badger faction, and all this stuff. You know, various types of animals, basically. It represents like land, sea, sky. So the sea is obviously going to have like, you know, the water faction is going to have frogs and fish-like creatures, and the land one's going to have badgers and rabbits. But man, do they look good. They look good. These 2 in particular, I mean, you've got a Berserker and Rider of the Meadows. And basically, I mean, I'm going to put a picture of these up because look at these 2. The artwork looks phenomenal. And just look at the characters. Look at the Berserker in particular. I mean, man, this would be a different episode of Watership Down if you used these characters, wouldn't it? But it just looks really good. The panoramic picture on here looks great when you're moving the tiles. And production-wise, the cards are good stock. I've sleeved them because you do utilize them a lot. You're shuffling them under cards and stuff. So I think sleeving them is still recommended, and there's plenty of room in the box for it. But a couple of other little bits here are a little bit less so. I mean, you can mark abilities that you've done with this tiny little X token. I think these probably should have been a little bigger, frankly. And the victory point tokens are just basic cardboard, and I don't like the fact that they use just a weird star symbol. You know, you've got to remember that the big ones are worth 5, you know, which isn't always easy to remember. But why they couldn't have just put a 1 or a 5 on the token? If it's just going to be a victory point token, just put a number on it. It's a lot easier to read. The insert and the box kind of give you a sense that this is going to be a bigger game than you would expect. You know, the game has some depth to it, but, you know, this box makes you think, oh, there's a lot in here, it's going to be quite involved. No, most of this box is just here so you can hold the player boards and these tiles. You know, that's what half of this box is there for. It's only these 2 cubby holds for cards and a few extra bill bits for tokens. So, you know, it's a big box for what it is you've got in within. But, that being said, the gameplay itself, very good fun. I really enjoy the card play system in this. You know, it works in Ancient Knowledge, and it has that Race for the Galaxy feel. Like, it's on the same kind of depth level as Race for the Galaxy. But Ancient Knowledge had a few extra little fiddly rules in place. There was stuff you could do while it was on the timer, and it was good. But my biggest issue with Ancient Knowledge was that it just sucked at higher player counts. You know, you really wanted to play it solo, and you needed an expansion to play a decent solo of it. 2-player it kind of worked, but 3 and 4 it just dragged on. Here, unfortunately, that's kind of repeated. I mean, this game does feel like, I mean, you can't play it solo for a kickoff. You know, this is a 2 to 4 player game, there is no solo mode. I'm cool with that, not every game needs one. But it does take longer the more players you have, and there's not a lot of player interaction other than the battlefields, you know, the sources as they call them, which is basically a case that if I take it, then basically somebody else could come along with more strength for other creatures and take it off me. So you're playing kind of like a little tug of war with this. But other than that, you might get the occasional effect that affects other players, but that's the limit of the interaction in this game. And the box, for some stupid reason, puts 45 minutes as a flat timer on the box. No, it simply isn't. 2 to 4 players cannot be 45 minutes. If you have more players, you have more VP tokens, you have more turns, the game naturally takes longer. That's just a fact.
He's out of line, but he's right.
So why they didn't put a bandwidth, I don't know. But, you know, in all honesty, 2 players, if you know what you're doing and you're at lightning fast speed, you could probably do this in about 40 minutes. But I think to be more realistic, you're looking at somewhere between 40 to 90. You know, a 4-player game could take 90 minutes if your first game, people are a little bit slow, or if people tug of war over these sources a little bit too much over other things. So it can drag a little bit. But that's more with a 4-player game. Typically, you're playing this in about an hour, maybe an hour 15 minutes. So it's kept to a decent length. It doesn't outstay its welcome for the most part. And the turns, once you get used to the game, are pretty snappy. You basically just take 2 actions. You mark them with cubes, and basically you're only able to do 1 of 4 different actions, and there are limitations on what you can do with the sources. But yeah, if I decide that my turn is literally just going to be draw 2 cards and then advance 2 cards on the track, this could literally just be my turn. 2, and I'm going to advance those 2. There you go, done. Next player, please. And it can go pretty swift and pretty fast, but get a slow player in this game and it can feel like you're waiting between turns. The mechanics though, the cards, really enjoy it. I mean, I like the simplicity. This one is more, you know, you're going to say, I like its purity.
I admire its purity.
The simplicity of having no effects on the timer track. You know, because other games have said, oh yeah, while it's on the timer track, it does this. And that's all well and good, but I like the fact they streamline it so that you've only got to worry about their effects when they come off. And certain cards are going to take ages to come off, and some of them are going to be off instantly. And then they start activating their abilities, and that's when you start getting their benefits. So you've got 2 aspects of the game. You've got how fast can I get it off this track, for depending if I need the ability or the high strength creature or not, but versus once they're off my board, what can I actually do with it? It's, you know, a decent little card play system there. The extra abilities on the flames, you know, always a nice thing because you've got to time it with when the tile comes off the board. It's all well and good saying like, you know, well, the red abilities, I've got a bunch of those, they're fantastic, but it's only going to come off your board once every now and again. It's going to be a massive dopamine hit when it actually does come off and you trigger all these abilities, but do you still have those creatures at the time? Do you need to put them into a location? Because like Abyss, if you put them in a location, their effects go away. So now you don't have that flame effect anymore. You might have one on the source, but you know, you may not. So there's a lot of little timing aspects that you have to bear in mind here, like when it's on here, when it's off here, and whether it's going to go into a battlefield or not. And I know I'm calling them battlefield, source, battlefield, same thing. But it's a, you know, cool little system, and it's not, they're not complicated abilities. You know, nobody's got a ability here that makes no sense or is going to require an FAQ or anything. The iconography is very easy to read. There's text as well. You know, so these sort of things are not difficult to deal with. There's maybe 1 or 2 FAQ moments with stuff like timing, like, you know, normally there's a restriction on when you're allowed to, you know, conquer and fortify a source. And so you're like, well, hang on, how does this ability work that lets me perform this action instantly? If you read the rulebook thoroughly, it does explain it. It just might need a couple of read-throughs to go, oh yeah, that's answering that problem. But yeah, there's not a lot of FAQ moments that generated from playing this game ever. You know, most people kind of got what they needed to get out of it. It's just a fairly simple game. Now, replay value is a bit of a concern. there is only 6 of these source cards. That is not enough. You use 1 per player in the game. So if you're playing this with 3 or 4 a lot of the time, you're going to see half, if not more, of these sources in your first game. And some of them will, alter kind of like the flow of the game if you have certain combinations out. But when you've only got 6 of them, to have 4 of them out, most of the time you're going to see the same source repeated over and over again. And really, you should have had at least 12 in here. Would it have been that hard to have designed 12 of these and then you used 1 per player? It would have added so much more variety to the game, but 6 just feels really low. And also, there's not a lot of cards in general. You're going to be trying to collect a lot of a particular faction or a particular type because a lot of abilities stem from that. There is some abilities that like diversification, but for the most part, you're kind of focusing on 1 or 2 things. Well, there's 2 issues with that. Firstly, there's only 105 odd cards in this deck. It's not a lot. So you're going to see a lot of these cards during the game, and after the first few games, you're going to see like most of what's there. And there's a worry that after a lot of plays, it could get a little bit stale if they don't expand this in the near future with more cards. You do have to accept that because this is a lighter game that there is going to be an element of card luck. You may be focused a lot on the land cards, the land faction or whatever, and then you play through the game and all you see is sky stuff, and the land stuff just doesn't come out. It's the nature of the beast with these light engine card games. I mean, for crying out loud, Race of the Galaxy is no different. The amount of times I've played Race of the Galaxy and got shafted because certain cards didn't come out, it's just the nature of the beast with light engine builder card games. But the game takes about an hour to play, an hour and a quarter or so. It's not going to be like a lot out of your life. You're going to expect a little bit of a sort of almost a push your luck element, or just the fact of luck of the draw. But you do get to draw a lot of cards in this game. I mean, you will draw cards every round anyway, just as part of the game mechanics, but then you've got an action to draw more cards and you've got other stuff to draw more cards. So you will draw a decent amount of cards to use, and because they cost cards to play the card, you're going to find something specific that you want to play. The rest of your hand might as well be fodder. It's almost a bit like playing Earth. Is that behind me somewhere? But yeah, Earth. Because in that one, you can have about 12 cards in your hand. But at the end of the day, you need to pick the 2 or 3 that you're interested in playing, and the rest might as well be fodder at that stage. Well, this is the same thing. I find my Rider of the Meadows. He's the one I want to play. Right, it's going to cost me 3 other cards. I don't care what these other 3 cards are. This is the guy I want to play. These 3 are trash. So it's not too difficult to find the stuff that you need, but you just got to accept it's a card game, luck of the draw. It's going to happen, all right? You can't get like a 100% skill, no luck version of this game. It's just not going to happen. So overall, I've actually really enjoyed this. I dare say this is actually one of the best games that I've played with Luciani's name on the box. I know this is a co-design, so give some credit to Roberto as well, but given that there's a lot of games that this guy co-designs where I go, ugh, I hate this, it is revolting, this one I actually really enjoyed. But that being said, 45 minutes is a bit misleading on the box. It's going to be a longish game. I don't think this game is that particularly interesting with 4 players. I think this is definitely a game that you're going to ideally want to play with 2. I would say 3 max. I've enjoyed my 3-player games. I think 4 is just 1 player too many. It doesn't really add anything extra to the game, adding more players, so there is that restriction on the player scaling. There's no solo mode. I feel like a solo mode could have been done with this one. I mean, I don't want one in every game. I just feel like this one could have had one easily put in, just to give something to that. But I'm not gonna mark it down for not having a solo mode. It's just a comment. And the replay value is a little bit concerning. Only 6 sources, only 100 cards. This is going to be fun for at least a good, 10, 15 plays, I would say. 10 plays, yeah, you're going to have a great fun with this. But then after that, you're definitely going to be thinking, when are we going to get an expansion? When are we going to get more source cards? And that's all the game needs to do. I don't actually need a ton more mechanics. You can throw maybe 1 new mechanic into the game, but that's it. Just give me another 100 cards and another 6 to 12 source cards in 1 expansion. That's it. Don't need boards, don't need extra components, just give me a bunch more cards. Just basically double the size of these decks, and you're in with a good shout there for an expansion. But when are we going to see an expansion? Is this game going to be one of those where somebody plays it a few times and goes, oh, that was enjoyable, bit bored with it now, and shove it on the sell pile at a Bring and Buy? This will happen, and I have seen this appear on Bring and Buys. I think that is happening. The lack of variety in the game is a concern, but it's still a very fun game, certainly for a while. You know, it's going to give you your money's worth because it's not a particularly expensive game. Just bear that caveat in mind, okay? So for me, I'm giving this one a pretty strong 8 out of 10. I was contemplating a 9, actually, because I do enjoy this one quite a bit. But that replay value is a concern. You know, it is a concern, and, you know, there are... You know, the player scaling is a bit of a factor as well. Like, I dare say you could actually maybe call this a 9 out of 10 if it's just at 2 players. But when you add more players in, it does give diminishing returns, I feel. So, you know, all in all, a very impressive game. Something a little bit different from Cranio and something a little bit different from Luciani as well. So, kudos in both respects. I've really enjoyed this. I'm going to hang on to this one for a while and hope that in the long run, they expand this game based on its popularity. If they don't expand this ever, that could be a problem, but we'll cross that bridge in the future. So that's it for me on this episode of The Broken Meeple. If you like what you see, then please thumb it up on YouTube and thumb it up on Board Game Geek when it goes live on the page. Check out the rest of my content. Let me know your comments down below. Are you already bored with this game? Have you already seen too much? Or are you not encountering that problem at all? Are you like 100 cards, 6 sources, it's plenty enough for you? I'd be interested to know your thoughts, and do you even care if there's no solo mode in this game? Until next time, remember, regardless if you want to see this weird alternate director Snyder cut version of Watership Down or not, it's still only a game, so bye for now.